And we're live. Thank you. Good morning from Council Chambers. We are live. We will be starting in just a few moments.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Would like to call this meeting back to order. And this time, I would like to acknowledge that we meet on the traditional land of Treaty 6 territory and acknowledge the diverse indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory for centuries, such as Cree, Dene, Sotu, Blackfoot, Ngora Sioux, as well as Métis and Inuit, now settlers from around the world. Do a quick roll call of council members. Councillor Wright.
Good morning.
Councillor Knack.
Good morning.
Councillor Principe.
Good morning.
Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Paquette.
Good morning.
Councillor Tang.
Good morning.
Councillor Hamilton. Councillor Hamilton.
Good morning.
Councillor Rutherford.
Good morning.
Councillor Salvador.
Good morning.
Councillor Cartmel.
Good morning.
Councillor Rice.
Good morning.
And Councillor Jans. All right. So,
Morning.
Councillor Jans, you
Good
are
morning.
there.
Good morning.
Okay. So before we go into our first item, which will be the, just hold on here. 7.5 Truth and Reconciliation Commission Implementation Plan Update. First item of business for today. I do want to actually thank some of the children of our staff coming to City Hall today. Today is a Bring Your Child to Work Day, right? So, Andre, you wanna, which staff have their kids with them? So, want to say a few words?
Yeah, sure. We're just delighted to, we paused this program during COVID, and it's just another part of COVID recovery. We're delighted to bring the program back. And so I think we have 3 children from some of our staff, including Adam Laughlin's daughter, and we have Sarah's daughter. Yeah, there. And sorry, I did. Kim's daughter. So, and there should be many more throughout the city today and as part of this program. So yeah, we just wanted to point that out. It's a great opportunity. So
kids, you want to say anything? No? Okay.
I have asked if Jillian wants to say anything, and she's not interested, so.
Well, make sure you take notes, right? And maybe you can share those notes with us, right? Give us some input and feedback, right? We would welcome that. Okay, all right. So we are going into that, our first item, 7.5. What we will do, we'll get a presentation from administration. Then I will go to Councillor Paquette to move the recommendation. And Councillor Stevenson is okay with that. Okay, Councillor Paquette, so be please ready to do so.
Point of order?
Yeah.
Do we have to move the recommendation for the addition of attachment 4 and deletion of attachment 3?
Yes, please.
Here we go. See?
Second.
First mistake of the day. All right, please vote.
I'm a yes.
I'm a yes.
Thank you, Councillor Tang.
I'm a yes.
Thank you, Councillor Jans. We're just waiting for 2 more votes.
I'm yes.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. Councillor Hamilton? Councillor Hamilton? We'll show Councillor Hamilton as absent. We have 12 votes, Mr. Mayor.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Now we can go to 7.5, which is Truth and Reconciliation Commission Implementation Plan Update. And I'll go to our city manager for a presentation.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. Good morning. We're here to provide a presentation that will be done by myself and Jamie Miller. We also have a pretty big delegation, either online or in person, including all of VLT, of course, our Chief of Staff, Salima Ibrahim, Jasmine Brazil, Jamie Miller, Priya Basan Singh. And I also wanted to take this opportunity this morning to introduce to Council and the public Latif Jina. And Latif is our new Senior Executive Advisor on Anti-Racism and Intersectionality, and he's up at the top left there. You can see him, and he'll wave. He is...
Can you stand up so we can see? There we go. Welcome to the team.
Yeah. As Council will recall, establishing these senior executive advisors from an Indigenous relations perspective and from an anti-racism perspective was one of our first early actions in the anti-racism strategy. Latif joins us with over 20 years of global experience leading collaborative partnerships between communities and governments. He has a deep dedication to social justice. Over the course of his career, he has designed and managed transformative programs that increase inclusiveness of local governance and that improve community and civil society participation in public debate. He has also worked on projects that create equity in access to public services such as education, health, housing, and water. And we're very grateful to have Latif bring his experience to the City of Edmonton and to our anti-racism file. He will be working closely with Jamie Miller, the Senior Executive Advisor on Indigenous Relations in our office, and of course, in addition with Salima and Jasmine in the CMO. So just important to note that we've reconstituted this with the departure of Savan, Dr. Bukian, who left for another exciting opportunity. So, yes, we are here today to share our progress on the Truth and Reconciliation Municipal Response Plan. This plan represents the city's commitment to addressing all of the 94 calls to action outlined in the TRC final report, and it's a really, I think, important day to bring this response plan to councils for consideration. Before we begin with this presentation, in addition to what the mayor acknowledges at the beginning of our meetings, I did want to offer a territorial acknowledgement. And just explain that a bit. These acknowledgements offer us an opportunity to situate ourselves in the lands we live on and help us reflect on the relationships that were required to build our city and bring us to where we are today. Edmonton has the second largest Indigenous population of any municipality in Canada, with the latest statistics, the 2021 census, showing that we have close to 88,000 First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. We are a service hub for many Indigenous communities and home to many more. The community is diverse, young, and a growing community, and we want to work alongside community members to create a safe, welcoming, and vibrant city. In that spirit, I offer this territorial acknowledgement. And we'd like to thank the diverse Indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory for centuries, such as the Dene, Anishinaabe, Nakota Sioux, and Niitsitapi peoples. We also acknowledge that this is the Métis homeland and home of one of the largest communities of Inuit south of the 60th parallel, and it's a welcoming place for all peoples who come from around the world to share Edmonton as a home. And together we call upon our collective honored traditions and spirits to work in building a great city for today and future generations. Now on this slide, each of these quadrants represents a diverse grouping of Indigenous peoples' interests and approaches within our municipal context. The city advances its work towards reconciliation through partnerships with local urban needs-based and Indigenous organizations, elders, grassroots community advocates and movements, institutional and government partners, and rights holders such as First Nations and representative organizations. Following the development of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, governments and institutions began to evaluate their engagements based upon service provision and scope of authority. Many institutions have proceeded to develop their own approaches and processes towards Indigenous engagement, relationship building, and addressing the TRC and the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls two-spirit calls for action. In our country, legal proceedings and negotiations have also continued to help shape how Indigenous nations, peoples, and the Canadian state interact across various sectors and topical areas. I will add that these diverse groups of relationships are all critically important to our understanding of our TRC calls to action and how we respond as a municipality. And we strive to do this in the spirit of relationship and kinship as expressed in the Indigenous framework. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission was mandated to reveal to Canadians the complex truth about the history and ongoing legacy of residential schools, and also to guide and inspire a process of truth and healing towards reconciliation with Indigenous communities in Canada. While this work was done in many ways, the Commission held 7 4-day national events, and the final event was here in Edmonton. The goal was to ensure that voices of those most directly affected by residential schools, particularly former students, were included in this historical record. The Commission heard nearly 7,000 statements from survivors of residential schools, members of their families, and other individuals who wished to share knowledge of the residential school system and the legacy of that system. From these records, the TRC Commission published the TRC Final Report, outlining 94 calls to action for all Canadians, governments, and sectors. As a result of the TRC report, the city manager at that time asked administration to begin a process to renew our relationships with Indigenous peoples in Edmonton. And the Indigenous framework seeks to answer the question of how we as a city can support positive and meaningful relationships with Indigenous peoples, and included extensive community and internal engagements, elder guidance, and ceremony as well. This work resulted in the 4 roles and 7 commitments, as well as the action plans. This current City Council, as well as this executive leadership team, have been clear in their commitment to continuing to build, repair, and maintain relationships, and to responding to what we have heard from Indigenous communities here in Edmonton. That is why in March of 2022, we created the Indigenous Relations Senior Executive Advisor position held by Jamie Miller within the Office of the City Manager, and the role was established to allow for the creation of a dedicated TRC municipal response plan that is aligned with Indigenous framework. And I just want to emphasize that we've really been focusing on taking the framework and the strategy and the very thoughtful considerations of all of this and turning it into action. And we've really challenged ourselves to not only select those 94 calls to action that are clearly in a municipal responsibility and jurisdiction, but we've challenged ourselves to translate all 94 calls to action into a municipal action that can take place and happen. So we believe we can do something in this city on all 94 calls to action. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jamie to share our progress on the development of our response plan. Jamie.
Thank you so much, Andre, and good morning, Council. I apologize I couldn't be there in person this morning. The roads and conditions seem to thwart me a little bit this morning, but very happy to be here with you. Thank you, Andre, for that overview. I would say as we continue in the ongoing work towards reconciliation and right relations with Indigenous peoples, we want to remind ourselves that when it comes to reconciliation, the process is part of the outcome. And so in February 2021, the City Council and Administration launched the Indigenous Framework, which again was a community-informed guide for the processes we use to action our work on reconciliation. So to me, again, it truly is a framework. It's the structural scaffolding upon which we can embed our TRC response plan, our MMIWG response, our nation-to-nation work with our MOU partners and other First Nations and Métis communities and Inuit communities, our Indigenous framework actions. And so these action plans are the work we do to bring about the shifts in the mindset, skill set, and heart set of the individuals that work for the City of Edmonton. This work is critical to advancing reconciliation within the systems that we occupy as individuals and in our communities. And so altogether, we're striving, I think the Indigenous framework, alongside these other plans, is really helping us to identify and change the systemic barriers and systems and mindsets and policies that have held colonization in place since 1867 at least, but perhaps before that as well. The Indigenous framework outlines the principles and Indigenous knowledge of Wahigi Chobi and Wakotowin to guide us. How we do the work is defined through the 4 roles of listener, connector, advocate, and partner. And the reason why we do the work, the 7 commitments that we have made as an organization, sets reconciliation as one of our major priorities. Those commitments include using the TRC calls to action, the MMIWG calls for justice, and the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People as a foundation for how we are going to frame our relationships with Indigenous peoples and how we are going to achieve the systemic change that we're looking for. And so the image that you see before you is hopefully meant to encapsulate that thinking, that the Indigenous framework truly is what surrounds and permeates all of the work that we do as a City of Edmonton, with the community right in the center of everything that we do, our elders and knowledge keepers, the community needs and voices that are guiding us. And from those things, we are then building off this TRC municipal response plan, as well as our MMIWG work, and as I mentioned, our nation-to-nation work and framework action plans. All the work we do is guided by the spirit of the framework, which is the direction provided to us from community and community voices. The TRC municipal response plan that I'm here to speak to you about today is an example of some very specific actions and work we will do, as Andre mentioned, to fulfill the 94 calls to action. There's other work also happening across our corporation, again, such as the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and Two-Spirit LGBTQ2+, which also will be coming to Council on November 21st. These plans are all supplemented by work of the Indigenous Relations Office and multiple business areas and lines of work that are advancing how we can work more inclusively and invite the strength of diversity across our programs and services as a city. Next slide, please. Over the summer, administration undertook a scan of municipalities that were working on local responses to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action. We wanted to connect with and learn from other municipalities that were embarking on this work. And I will say that as someone who has worked in municipal Indigenous relations, it's been very heartening and pleasing for me to see other municipalities really taking this work seriously and developing their own local context responses. Oh, sorry, Google is listening to me. Just mute that. Sorry about that. So over the summer, myself and other members of administration interviewed the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo, the city of Saskatoon, the city of Regina, the city of Winnipeg, the city of Toronto, Yellowknife, Vancouver, and the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. And some of the common themes that stood out was that most cities had an approach to reconciliation, either framed through the TRC calls to action. Some even had specific missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls response plans. All of the municipalities recognize that often the work of addressing the calls to action outweighs the resources and or capacities available within the municipality and within the community. And thus, there are some limits on the impact that we can have and the progress that can be made. Municipalities had to focus on prioritizing actions that are most aligned with their local context and jurisdictional responsibility. Many of the actions identified by other municipalities also show up in our proposed plan forward. And much like here in Edmonton, how we measure impact is a big topic of discussion and will be an area requiring additional work in the coming months and years as we advance on the TRC implementation. Next slide, please. So this TRC Municipal Response Plan was created through the use of extensive discussions, engagement, and relationships in multiple areas, such as the original sharing and testimonies through the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that resulted in the 94 calls to action, the Indigenous Framework, community conversations, and elder engagements spanning from 2019 through to this year, and the ongoing discussions with Indigenous elders and matriarchs, engagement for the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls report that identified the themes of awareness, addressing, and resurgence, the Mayor's Roundtable in June of 2022, informal discussions with elders and community members and partner organizations during the papal visit, and the work of the City Manager's Office to explore the concept of advocacy. The work to date has been shared with the Indigenous Framework elders, as well as the corporate Indigenous Framework Committee for initial feedback, and has been met with positive response. With the Indigenous Framework woven throughout the plan, there's a symbolic connection and real connection between the pieces of work and the interconnectedness that will continue to be nurtured and explored. The work is ongoing, the relationships are ongoing, and we'll be working together to ensure the work continues to be responsive to the needs of community. Next slide. So at a high level, the TRC Municipal Response Plan is organized into the 4 following pillars. And again, I will state that the way this is presented and looks at the moment is high level, and we will be conducting further refinement as we go forward. So the first pillar of awareness includes public education and training to enhance awareness and understanding of the impacts that residential schools and colonization has had on Indigenous communities. Examples of actions the city will commit to include continued mandatory Indigenous awareness training for all staff, continuing to find opportunities to learn and celebrate with Indigenous communities and support community-based cultural events, continuing to find opportunities to learn and celebrate with Indigenous communities and support community-based cultural events, and responding to call to action number 82, which calls on capital cities to create a residential school survivors monument or commemoration. Pillar 2, addressing, which includes specific actions and changes to the system to support positive outcomes and lived experiences for Indigenous peoples. Some examples of actions the city will commit to include continued funding of prevention activities, ensuring access to funding specifically for Indigenous groups to address the calls in community-based ways. Pillar 3, resurgence, funding and partnering with Indigenous communities to support the reclamation of culture, knowledge, language, and autonomy. How this will be actioned includes provided safe and dedicated ceremony and cultural spaces, for example, Kichiaski, as well as our support of the development of an Indigenous Cultural and Wellness Center. Recognizing Indigenous languages, such as representing the electoral ward names, neighborhood and road naming, as well as within council chambers, and ensuring that funding is available for revitalization of Indigenous cultures, celebrations, and spirituality across the city. The fourth pillar of advocacy is the last pillar and represents many of the calls to action that are outside of the jurisdiction of the City of Edmonton. However, we can play a role as an advocate and one of the key partners to respond to changing systems and structures that are impacting Indigenous peoples. This can be done in areas such as child welfare, education, health, and justice. These pillars align with what we have heard through many years of engagement and discussion with Indigenous communities, as well as on the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women Calls for Justice. This slide represents at a high level some of the actions we'll pursue as part of our municipal response. And this is the basis of how we'll move forward in defining more specific actions that we will take. And I'll now turn it back to Andre. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jamie. In order to support all the actions we have shared today and to progress on our journey of reconciliation, resourcing becomes a critical element of success. Administration will be putting forward a funded service package for the TRC Municipal Response Plan, and it aligns closely with the Council requested MMIWG2S and other service packages as part of Community Safety and Wellbeing funding envelope. The service package is going to be focused on both immediate and specific actions, as well as sustainable line items that allow flexibility and responsiveness to the needs of Edmonton's Indigenous community. We know that needs change and evolve over time, and as we advance in our journey of reconciliation, the work will need to shift. We want to build in sustainable ways to support the community, meeting them where they are at when they need it. Beyond the actions outlined in the previous slide, an additional attachment in the report provides some early insights into additional actions administration could take under each pillar. I do want to flag for Council that this list of actions reflects much of the work we are doing already and our early thinking on what more we can do. The 2023 to 2026 budget deliberations include service packages for additional work to occur, and those decisions will result in ongoing conversations with our Indigenous partners and internal stakeholders. Budget documents are being released tomorrow, as you know, for your consideration in the weeks ahead. The pillars for advancing our work on TRC have been shared among internal stakeholders as well as with the Indigenous Framework elders, who have provided us significant guidance in the development of the framework. We continue to receive feedback as the work is shared, and we are continuing to build that into the pillars and associated actions. And so I would also say that what you see today will change and evolve as we hear more. We have not completely done a full consultation on this with everyone. We've started that and will continue to evolve it. Some of this work includes looking more creatively at the actions that are out of our jurisdiction to see what type of municipal translation can occur. So, for example, many of the justice actions, we do have peace officers, we have transit officers, we have lawyers, and so how can we adapt all those things from a municipal perspective in terms of how we do our work in this space? Ensuring a publicly available communication plans that demonstrates our accountability, information sharing and storytelling where we can share our milestones together. Continuing to be connected with ELT, council and elders on the development and implementation of the response plan. Ensuring alignment with the Indigenous framework, the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls plan coming to council later this month, and of course the anti-racism strategy and the overall community safety and well-being strategy. While each of these plans require commitment and validation on their own, they also significantly overlap and impact one another and help us reach common goals. The more detailed elements of the work and the extent to which budget decisions will determine the speed of the work are yet to be finalized. For today's purposes, I want to highlight that the pillars are in place, that the general direction is clear and known, and that when we have a clearer sense of the detailing of resources, we will reconnect with community and immediately begin acting. The TRC Municipal Response Plan is a living document. It will change as we evolve and advance in our commitment to reconciliation and as the needs of the community change over time. Together, we will keep careful attention to ensure that we prioritize Indigenous people, their needs, and what they have told us in our ongoing efforts. And just before I conclude, to highlight that point, I really don't think that this response plan will ever end, and I don't think it should ever end. And I'll highlight a very specific example. Earlier this week, a group of us, including ELT and Jamie and some of the team, we went to visit the progress at Kichiaski, which is means sacred land, and is the city's project in collaboration with Indigenous peoples to provide a natural setting for the Indigenous community to host ceremonies, sweat lodges, and facilitate intergenerational learning. And I have to say, it's on time, it's on target, it's on budget, it's looking amazing, and will soon be open. But what was really striking to me about that meeting is while we went there to see the completion, if you will, or the almost completion of a project, we learned a whole bunch more about what needs to be done. And what I discovered on that visit was, while that site is looking really good and it's going to be an amazing place, 100 meters away from that site is a very important sacred ochre deposit, which has absolutely no protection from the city in terms of protecting that as a cultural site. And so we ended up having a whole dialogue about what cultural sites need to be protected in the city, and that's one of them. So it just, every time I go somewhere, I talk to somebody, we find another action that we need to do, and that's one we'll certainly add to the response plan. So I think it really illustrates the importance of never sort of finishing this and just continually doing whatever we have to do next. So with that, we'd be happy to take any questions. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much to your team, Andre, as well as Jamie, to your team and everyone involved. This is going to be this is much needed work and evolving work, as well as something that we have a responsibility to undertake. So thank you so much for putting this together. And I'm going to go to Councillor Paquette.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind giving me a moment, I just would like to compose myself.
Yes, absolutely.
So please go on to questions. Thank you.
Yeah, we can do that, right? So, Madam Clerk, City Clerk, please. Councillor Paquette needs a little time to compose himself, and can we go into questions in the meantime? Okay, good. All right, questions, colleagues. Okay. All right, sign up, please. Questions. Here we go. Councillor Stevenson.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you very much for the report and the great reflections today. I really appreciated, framing this as a shift in our mindset, skill sets, and heart sets. So thank you for those words, and thank you for the report. It's an exciting one, and I'm so pleased to know that a funded service package is going to be coming forward. That's wonderful news, and I think shows the commitment that we have for that. It's really, recognizing that this is an evolving plan. I think I have more sort of discussion questions than sort of specific ones. Actually, maybe I'll start. I really appreciated the diagram that sort of shows how we're approaching this work and that we're really centering relationships at the heart of that. I always struggle in terms of our role on council and how we support that in a meaningful way. And I know it can sometimes be hard to tell us what to do, but I'm wondering what opportunities there are to develop, if that has to be initiated by ourselves, but a really rigorous intergovernmental relations plan that involves councillors and how we build those relationships at the political level. I know that work is happening at the staff level, which is fantastic, but just wondering how we can intentionally support and evolve that work.
Yeah, it's a great question. Maybe I'll start, Jamie, and then hand over to you. But Councillor, I would just say that as much time as you can spend on this, we can fill every moment that you have available, because but I would say one of the most important roles of councillors, especially as elected officials and governors, is to really get engaged in ceremony, because it's such an important aspect of this work, and really helps make it genuine. So there have been opportunities, and council has participated in many of them over the last year. I think that's really important, and then I also think that sort of doing, council when they can, doing the walkabouts and meeting with elders and meeting with community and visiting these sites. Specifically, I know that when we open Kitchiaski, there'll be an opportunity for a sweat and for other ceremony associated with that. And the more involved council is in those, I think is a really important piece. And I'll just see if Jamie would like to add any other aspects.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andre, and thanks, Councillor. I would just, first of all, I would like to say thank you to the efforts that Council has made over the last year to be present with community. I've seen a lot of you in different Indigenous community events over the last year. It's been really heartening to see that and to see you really fulfilling that commitment that you've made. So thank you so much for the gift of time. And I would say that, this work is big and it's complex. And, as you saw from the slide, there are important relationships in every sector that I think we need to be thinking of in this work. And certainly the intergovernmental work extends not just obviously with government of Alberta or the government of Canada, but also with First Nations governments and Métis governments. And so I think just making sure that we're cognizant of that these relationships span multiple jurisdictions and sectors. And so the more we can be present and open to discussions and talking, I think the better outcomes that we'll see collectively.
Great, thank you. Well, and maybe picking up on that theme of complexity, again, I don't think I have a good answer to this, but I think what's challenging is that I really appreciate the intention around a TRC response plan. And from what I'm understanding, there'll also be a response around IWG. So that's great that those are sort of, because again, they have distinct purposes. And then we also have other actions, around our MOUs, urban reserves, that again, sort of maybe don't fit exactly under those. So just wondering how we sort of continue to, again, have that intentionality around the specific calls to action, but also not limit ourselves in terms of our overall reconciliation work to only those recommendations, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I would say, Councillor, that the framework keeps, the Indigenous framework is what keeps us on track there, because we are doing all of that. But we spend a lot of time sort of comparing and contrasting, and like when we went through the 94 calls to action, we put them on a table with a table of all the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls actions, and compared and contrasted and figured out, are there gaps and seams between those two types of reports and those actions. And then we do the same with our MOUs, and we evolve those MOUs over time. So this is another reason this work should never end. It should just be a constant part of our culture to continually do this. But I think we have good systems in place because of that, and it's the framework that I think brings it all together. So
great, thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Tang.
Great, thank you to the team for this mega work. Is I'm really I think the whole thing has been quite impressive in coming together, and I love seeing how it keeps moving. And Mr. Corbell, I really appreciate your comment around this is today we have a presentation, but this work is continuous and it's embedded and it's pervasive, and it surrounds us. I guess I was wondering, in terms of the municipal, action plan, how are we gonna, for example, get an update or a review? Would it be annually, or I guess I'm wondering for this piece, how frequently might it be? Might it come back to council?
yeah, my view, Councillor, with that, there would be the ability to do at least quarterly updates, and then if something in between that is significant that happens, that we can do that. So I think with the establishment of the response plan, it really gives us, and I don't like to think of these things in terms of checklists. I do like to think of these things in real cultural change, but to keep us on track, I feel that every quarter, based on what I see in front of us, we're going to be able to provide an update on what's going on, and I don't think that's unreasonable to do. And it may not be a detailed sort of written report, but we can certainly provide a verbal report quarterly. I just want to make sure that the resources in our offices to do this are really focused on action, not writing reports. But there'll definitely be a detailed annual report written, but I think quarterly updates is more than doable.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And I think the more we talk about it, it becomes much more, um, demonstrate that the priority, but also top of mind. So I appreciate that answer. I was also, I guess, following on Councillor Stevenson's question earlier, just in terms of that connection. And Ms. Miller, we've talked about this before, with the Indigenous framework, there is an Elders Council, or for example, but I'm, rather than, and again, reflecting on Mr. Corporal's comment around this is a continuous, issues of truth and reconciliation is all around us. And I'm wondering if you can speak to a little bit about the thought process around Elders Council, whether with this city council to seek advice, or what are some of the ways we're already doing that? Yeah, more of
ahead,
a,
Jamie.
I guess, a governance question.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Tang. So we've been, blessed to work with elders and knowledge keepers, over the last, I would say, close to 3 years, intentionally on the Indigenous framework. However, I would say the Indigenous Relations Office has been working with elders, since the time we began as an office. So, so this work is definitely a core part of what we do. I think the elders have played a really significant role in sharing that Indigenous knowledge and worldview. And we're actually preparing for an Indigenous Framework Winter Gathering with the corporate committee and the department committees, where we can bring the elders together with some of our city staff working on the Indigenous Framework to do that knowledge sharing and that relationship building. We're also planning on doing similar sessions with the executive leadership team as well, so that, again, that cultural sharing and knowledge transfer can be happening, throughout our organization. We could certainly look for opportunities for City Council as well to participate in those type of sessions if that's of interest. And to me, elders are advisors. They're our knowledge keepers. They have a wealth of experience that they bring from a cultural perspective, a life perspective. And they also are looking for opportunities to, again, help bring culture back into our city. We know that there are urban Indigenous peoples that may not be able to travel to get to ceremonies, to get to opportunities to connect with elders. And so things like Kichiaski or the Indigenous Cultural Wellness Center or others are ways for people in an urban environment to start reconnecting and revitalizing language and culture and ceremony. So I see the elders really driving us, particularly in that resurgence theme. To me, that theme is like the most exciting one, to see that resurgence happening in our city. So
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I do have one more, so I'll just come back for second round.
Thank you, Councillor
Thank
Tang. Councillor Principe, can you take the chair, please?
Yes, I have the chair.
Yeah, just want to follow up on that. If that conversation can happen with elders, like how we can engage with them, and I think it will be good guidance for us to figure out creating some sort of elders council to guide council's work, right? So maybe something to follow up in the conversation that you are having, and we will. My office is having some conversations as well in that area, right? It'll be something to follow up on. The Vancouver City Council, I think was right after the new council has made a commitment to UNDRIP. I think something to follow up on that as well, like what does the process is for us to kind of carry on this work and lead, because that was one of the things that is spoken in the TRC, right? How municipalities can be part of that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely, your Mayor. It is one of our action items for
Yeah.
sure. Do you want to chat on that a bit more, Jamie? Do you want to mention anything specific or?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's really exciting to see what's happening in Vancouver. The City of Vancouver, in our conversation with them and some of the research we did, began this work, over the last few years and partnered very closely with the three nations that make up the traditional territory that Vancouver sits on. And so they established a task force together to look at how they could develop a United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, a strategy for the municipality of Vancouver. And so that task force approach was taken, and they developed sort of technical working committees and things like that, that again was all done jointly together with those nations. So very exciting work, and I think it's certainly something that this work will lead into around in Edmonton.
Good. Good to know that you're connected and kind of following and monitoring that, which is on the reporting back to council. You said you'll be reporting annually, right? And is that so? That means no direction is required from council. That's the summit that you will do it in.
Yeah, but I do think we can provide quarterly updates we're committed to doing that. There's enough going on. There's enough things that we expect to be done in the next quarter that I think we should come back every quarter with at least a verbal report.
Okay.
And I
But
don't
quarterly verbal, but more in-depth report annually.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And for that, you're already taking that step. There's no direction required from council.
Correct.
For do
Yeah.
that. Okay. Because I think it's important that we have that in-depth conversation on an annual basis as well, right? On the advocacy part, I think there's a desire, the sense we got during our visit to Ottawa, for the federal government to engage on urban indigenous issues, and we have a very engaged minister here at a provincial level who's leading the indigenous portfolio, right? So there might be some opportunity for us to think in a broad way of maybe bringing elders, business leaders, and political leaders together to talk about this work and how we can foster that collaboration.
Yeah, I think it's a very good idea, Mayor. I would say if I were asked what is the difficulty or the most frustrating, I would say sometimes there's not as much a sense of urgency in some of these things that bother us. Don't get me wrong, there's lots of collaboration towards establishing an Indigenous reserve or an urban reserve in the city of Edmonton, but it's going all too slow from my perspective, and I wish we could, but we don't own those processes, so that's something that I think that sort of gathering that you mentioned would be very useful in sort of maintaining momentum and ensuring that everyone maintains a sense of urgency on this matter.
Okay, well, let me think more about that. Okay, well, I will. I saw Councillor Salvador was on the line. Okay. You asked my question. Oh, I did. Okay. All right. So I will move the second round.
Second.
Thank you. Please vote.
In favor.
Thank you, Councillor Jans. We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. And that has carried. I'll pass the chair back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Go to Councillor Stevenson.
Yes, thank you. Just want to echo again my interest in those meetings with elders and knowledge keepers. I think that's a great approach, and definitely excited for that. So I want to talk about budget, because that's obviously the theme of the days. So really appreciate that a service package is going to be coming forward, a funded operating package. I did note that there is a gap just in terms of creating the culturally welcoming spaces, and there not being an associated capital profile for that. Just wondering if that, just wondering how we accommodate that need for some of the physical investment, and if that will be developed as we move forward.
Yeah, I think, Councillor, the answer is yes, we need to do that. And I think a good example is Kichiaski, that there was a clear commitment from council to create that. And I think we have to do more of those. And so they will continue to be on the list. While they may not all be in the capital plan yet, I think we're going to have to work on that. I also think we have to work with other orders of government on how we can, based on, for example, the work we've already done in some of these places, get some other funding to do other parts of that work. Yeah. I don't think each project needs to be necessarily a third each, because we did 100%, if you will, of Kichiaski. So how can we leverage that for more support?
Absolutely. Well, and actually I'm thinking about maybe the smaller opportunities as we go through a lot of facility renewal, and the opportunity that we would have to incorporate visuals, and also, again, maybe some of the infrastructure required to support smudging in our city facilities. So again, wondering if that's like a top up to the renewal profile, or if that's just a change in policy that becomes part of what we incorporate as part of our renewals.
Yeah, I would already say we've already put that into action with renewals and new builds. We're looking at smudging in particular. So I can tell you that Kichiaski in the indoor component is designed for allowing smudging ceremonies in the indoor building part of it when necessary. And so we're sort of looking at different inventories and how we can do that more in the city. Whether it's written in policy, we would have to check, but I know culturally we're there already, and so I think we absolutely have to do that.
Yeah, perfect. Well, not to put him on the spot as he comes back into the room, but maybe Mr. Laughlin, just wondering about the opportunity as we go through renewal of some of our facilities, just the opportunity to incorporate some of the Indigenous placemaking principles that are reflected in this action plan.
Yeah, I think certainly that's, as Mr. Corbold has outlaid, is something we're trying to incorporate in all of our activities. So certainly that's something we'll start to look at opportunities. Some of the renewal activities are very basic in the nature of replacing a mechanical system. So it maybe doesn't present that same opportunity as if it's a full renewal, but absolutely.
Great, thank you so much. Also, just wanting to make sure with the service package coming forward. So again, I in no way mean to critique this work. It's an excellent foundation, but as you've mentioned, it's recognizing that there's ongoing work. So what stood out to me was some of the actions around Action 75 in the TRC burial grounds, the identification, documentation, and maintenance of those. So just wondering if the operating funding that's come forward provides the resources to continue evolving those actions and adding to those actions.
I believe it does, but you may not necessarily see it in the service package in ops that articulated. But what I would say, Councillor, is from a zoning bylaw perspective, and as we look at all the different types of procedures we have, everybody is being asked to consider these as a priority as they move forward. So you may not see that specific item mentioned in the service package, but it would be covered in base funding in terms of a priority for us to do that. So there's lots of things I would say that we're doing that we're just making a high priority in our base budget without necessarily asking for new money. So, and sometimes it's little things. Sometimes it's painting crosswalks on a particular day that we've done that just, what I'm delighted about that example is that there was no direction. It just happened by employees who understand what's going on now and are really diving into it. So,
absolutely.
And the bus wrap, on different things. So
and it is so exciting. And I think that capturing some of that stuff that's just happening is such an important part of the annual report as well to help us capture. So really fantastic.
But I do want to be clear that what is in the service package that supports some of these actions is part of the resources. There is a whole bunch of base funding that does these things, because the bus wrap and the crosswalks were just base funding pieces that people
Yeah.
just made a priority. So.
Perfect.
But
No.
we will capture that in the annual report.
Great. Well, and speaking about, annual reports, I really look forward to the quarterly updates and the full annual report. Just wondering the process for the report back and the accountability to community as well. So again, it speaks, the action plan speaks about those regular gatherings and meetings. Is the intent of those also to be providing some of that reporting back and an accountability mechanism?
Yeah, absolutely. And while we are here today to present this report, the next time we come back to have this discussion, I think you'll also see some Indigenous elders with us, and I think we need to, so part of the reporting should not just be us today. That was a bit of a logistical piece, but we want to be in front of council and the public on these things with the community side by side.
Great. Well, that's my time. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. Councillor Wright?
Thank you very much. I do appreciate the opportunities that have been presented to council for us to learn and expand our knowledge in regards to Indigenous relations. And my question, I guess, was just centering around that base funding with the service package coming forward. You did mention that it's going to be an ongoing process, and I think it should sort of be woven into everything we do. And so was this just the service package, is this more just to put emphasis on the work being done, or?
Well, the service package are very specific actions that could not be done as part of our base funding, and we required specific funding to do that. And that's what you'll see in tomorrow's operations.
Okay.
And it really follows some of the direction we've also had from council on community safety and well-being, and dedicating some of that to anti-racism and TRC. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I think what will be important, Councillor Wright, is that when we report, we show you not only how those service packages were implemented, but all the other baseline stuff that was done.
Okay. Yeah. Good. And just the results in the report here, we talk about building relationships with the public schools. Could I ask Ms. Lachlan a question?
I'm not sure if that's procedurally appropriate, but fire away.
Have you noticed more Indigenous knowledge being provided to you in the public schools?
Yes, I feel like we talk about it a lot in school classes.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad to hear the results are positive. Thank you.
Here you go. You can include her in the delegation.
Done.
All right. Is that it, Councillor Wright? Yes. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, before I go to Councillor Paquette, we do have with us grade 6 Nellie Carlson School with teacher Samantha Martins from Ward Behisivin, which is represented by Councillor Cartmel. Thank you so much for joining us. Nice to see you all. Today at this time, we are discussing the role that our city council, Edmontonians like you, have to play in meeting our commitments on the truth and reconciliation work that we need to do with the Indigenous communities in Edmonton. Very important work that we are undertaking, and you'll be shaping that work through your engagement in the schools and the community. So, thank you for joining us today. Okay? Yeah. All right. Councillor Paquette?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I'd like to move that the October 31st, 2022 Office of the City Manager Report, OCM 01477, be received for information.
Yes, I can second it, right? Yeah,
Please do.
Yes, I second it, yeah.
Well, thank you. And I do have a few questions, but if you don't mind, I'll quickly introduce it. This is longstanding work, and it started very definitively with the last council and is being carried even more definitively, I believe, with this council. And I would also like to, I would like to thank this council for your efforts, and I would like to thank administration for all the hard work and all the community members that contributed to this work. It's really phenomenal. This reconciliation work is so important to the health of our city. It touches on so many of the things that we talk about in council, about things that actually need to be fixed. And what this reconciliation work will do is give context to that work and give meaning to that work and hopefully accelerate that work as well. So I'm really happy to put it on the floor. I'll speak to it at the appropriate time. But right now, I will mention that when the presentation was given, I was hit unexpectedly by emotion. And I was literally, I had to clean myself up. So that's a little bit of a mess. And I will say, although we're not allowed props, I don't think this counts as a prop. I've got smudge here that I've had burning during this conversation. And also with me are these two elements. These are, this is eagle wings. And they're used in ceremony, in Sundance specifically. And not only was that ceremony illegal in my Muslim's time, but so were these. They would be confiscated by an Indian agent and destroyed. And my Muslim, if caught, would have gone into the legal system. And so this is really meaningful for me personally today. So I do have a question though, and it's more of a utilitarian question, but you know, following up on Councillor Stevenson's line of thought, I was just wondering about the entrances to our city. And, you know, I've heard often remarked that it's very underwhelming to drive into the city of Edmonton. And I'm wondering if with sort of our capital project monies, with Explore Edmonton, with the EIA on the south side, and other various partners, and with this reconciliation work, if, oh, and by the way, our tree planting efforts, if there is a way to beautify the entryways into our city with boulevards and with language and with images that help people who are coming in understand that they're coming into one of the best places on earth.
Yeah, Councillor, I think the short answer is yes, there absolutely is. And, you know, we're going to take that away and sort of work on some plans as part of our action with that. Absolutely. So, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
And I would say it's not just, and I think it's everywhere. It's not just entrances to the city. It's here at City Hall. We've got quite a bit of work to do even at City Hall in terms of where things are and how things are portrayed and what improvements we can make. So,
absolutely. Yeah, putting a good foot forward always helps as well. So, and do we have sort of a timeline on when those things could be accomplished, and maybe which ones we want to accomplish in what fashion?
I think we'd probably have to get back together on those specifics. I think we have to do a bit more work on the specifics of that, unless Ms. Miller has something to add.
There's several items, I think, in the service package that you'll see that could be activated fairly quickly, specifically to supporting the implementation of the Indigenous framework. I think we have department action teams in each department that have specific projects that I think could be advanced very quickly. The other one, Andre, that I'm particularly excited about is City Hall. And doing some work with the Edmonton Arts Council, as well as some of our partners to enhance the artwork and the presence of the Indigenous framework and the beautiful artwork that we were gifted by Indigenous artists inside City Hall. So,
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paquette. Councillor Tang.
Thank you so much. Councillor Paquette, I thought you were going to mention the signage at the entrance, but I will not open that can of worms at this point. I really appreciate the mayor bringing up the Vancouver City Council UNDRIP, because I think they just approved it last week, and I understand, you know, UNDRIP is a separate piece of work that we're also continuously embarking on. But I was very curious about the approach they take, as you pointed out, Ms. Miller, with other nations forming a collective. And I'm wondering, have we ever explored that approach in developing the strategy, whether with TRC, UNTRIP, or otherwise? And I guess related to that, I'm curious where the status is in terms of our MOU task force with Enoch First Nation.
Thanks, Councillor Tang. Really good question. Vancouver is a bit of a different context than Edmonton. As we know, there are no treaties. It's unceded lands, and I would have to do a bit more of an intensive study on the approach that they took to looking at an UNDRIP strategy for their city. But they do have the 3 nations on whose traditional territory they reside, and so the city worked very closely with them, as you say, as a collective to move that work forward. Edmonton has, I would argue, much more of a diverse Indigenous community than Vancouver in some senses. So we obviously have our MOU relationships with the Confederacy of Treaty 6, with the Enoch Cree Nation, as well as the Métis Nation of Alberta. We also have numerous relationships and work that we do together with urban Indigenous peoples. We obviously work with elders. And so we would have to, I think pretty carefully, or at least in an intentional way, on how we would approach something like the United Nations Declaration. We obviously are in treaty territory. However, I think we need to maybe do some more learning about treaty and what treaty means from an Indigenous perspective. Because some of the learnings that I've taken from working with elders and knowledge keepers in that realm is that, again, treaty is not about ceding land. It's about being in a relationship. It's about how we are going to live together in peace and friendship and share. And so I think we need to unpack that conversation a bit more in this Treaty 6 context that we're living in Edmonton. Again, we have a big, broad, diverse Indigenous community in Edmonton. As Andre mentioned, close to 88,000 Indigenous peoples live in the census metropolitan area, which is incredible. It's exciting. But I think that, we need to think about how we are engaging rights holders, as in First Nation governments, Métis governments, as well as urban Indigenous peoples. And I think there's relationship building and perhaps mending of relationships that might need to happen in the space that Edmonton occupies. And I would largely say that federal government and historic policies such as the Indian Act and others have really played a role in the landscape that we see in urban municipalities. And I think from what I'm hearing from this council, as well as from leadership in Treaty 6 and the Métis Nation, is that there's a desire to work collaboratively and work together in an urban space, and how we can all be working together in support of Indigenous peoples in Edmonton. So long answer, but suffice to say that I think it's something that we would definitely need to explore into how we can do that in an urban context such as Edmonton.
That was excellent. Thank you.
Thanks.
And and I think just reading through this kind of just pinned me about where things are at with the MOU task force.
Right, and sorry about that as well.
No,
Your
no.
second part of your question. So my understanding is that again, Enoch has a new chief and council. They've been getting settled and acclimatized. But my understanding is that we do have a stewardship roundtable that we have together, and we'll be looking at restarting that in the very near future.
Excellent. Thank you so much for all this work. And thank you for the responses.
Thank you, Councillor Tang. So that concludes the questions. We have a motion on the floor, and deck is cleared. Here we go. All right, to speak. I don't want to put too much burden on Councillor Paquette, but whatever he's going to say, he'll be speaking on behalf of council, right? I think you can mutually through your words, probably express the wishes of this council, how you want to move forward on this together. Why don't we just go to you to close?
Oh, okay, if no one else would like to speak.
I think there are a number of people who want to speak, but I think there's, because of the timelines and all that, right? So a few other items on the agenda. I can confidently say that what you're going to say is will be the voice of the entire council.
Okay, I look forward to the tweets and blogs.
Yeah.
Just not Councillor Nax.
Yeah.
I don't have that kind of time in my life.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So, as I mentioned earlier, I was very moved by hearing these words spoken in my city, the city I love, and the city I grew up in. As a child, my family was very, very poor. Think about poor and then make that very much more poor than that. And I remember wondering why, and I couldn't figure out an answer with a child's mind, because a child's mind is full of love and possibility. It wasn't until I started to grow older and go out into the world and saw my siblings facing horrible hate and then experiencing it myself that I understood that there was an intentional theft of identity and of wealth of Indigenous peoples in this land. And growing up so poor, I would often hear people telling me how good I have it as an Indigenous person because of all the free things I got. And I thought, well, the air is free. That's true. And sometimes that's enough. But what we do with that air is what matters. We breathe it in and it gives us life. And we get to choose what we do with that life and how we move in this world with that life. And we have been given the gift of language. And it is not lost on me that when a language is lost, an entire universe and a way of seeing the world is lost. And so with the language I have, I deeply express my gratitude to the people of Edmonton for giving me a chance to serve them and for giving this council a chance to serve and for saying that this is something that is important to them because not only were Indigenous children robbed, but non-Indigenous children were robbed as well. They were robbed of true history. They were robbed of the ability to look at their own nation's history without blemish. And they were robbed of possibility. What would this country be like if instead of empire, it had moved together in cooperation? What a world we could have had. And what a world we can create. And it starts with an individual decision, and on a governmental level, it starts with every municipality, every province, and the federal government doing what they can. And this plan from administration is a heart work and it's hard work. And it is evident in what was presented to us. My father was stolen from his home as a child with his siblings. And not all of them came back because they couldn't remember where they were from. One of my own siblings would deny their own ancestry and claim a different ethnic origin in order to escape discrimination. My uncle died on these streets. There is a deep trauma in our people, and it is written in our DNA. and it was done intentionally. But with intent, we can rewrite that history, and we can rewrite our future. And we will do it together. Aye, aye.
Thank you, Constable Paquette. Yeah. Please vote.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That has carried unanimously. And once again, thank you to administration for doing this work. A lot of work ahead of us. Thank you so much. Okay, next we are
Item 9.2.
okay. We go into in camera. So please, someone move that we go into camera. Councilor Hamilton.
We go into camera for item 9.2, subject to sections 21, disclosure harmful to intergovernmental relations, and 24, advice from officials, as well as 25, which is disclosure harmful to the economic and other interests of a public body of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you. And we will also be discussing 9.3. Can you also move that, please?
Oh, of course, item 9.3, which includes section 17, which is disclosure harmful to personal privacy. Sorry, I overlooked that.
Okay. And intergovernmental relations. And yep. Good. Okay. Got it. Thank you. Please vote.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried.
We're back online, Mayor Sohi. We're back in public, Mayor Sohi.
We are back in public. Okay, we need to receive the 9.2 and 9.3 for information. Councillor Rice?
Okay, so I'm going to move the 9.2 intergovernmental updates, 9.3 city manager updates, verbal report received as information.
Okay.
And keep in private, subject to FOIP, please.
Yes, and so the October 31st, 2022 Communications and Engagement Report, CEO 1382 remain private pursuant to Section 21 and 25 and of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act.
Okay.
Is that
Yeah, so we'll vote on this one first, or
Second.
The motion's been moved.
Both motions been moved?
For the recommendation for 9.2 and 9.3,
Got
and
it.
we'll keep both of them in private.
got it? Okay, so please vote.
Seconder?
Councillor Rutherford seconded it.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Any notes or motions without customary notice? I haven't got any notices on that, so we are adjourned at 12:16.